What do we really know about early literacy in St. Louis?
More than 60% of Black third graders in the region annually fail in reading.
Help us to transform the way that children experience literacy at school and at home.
Become a supporter of the St. Louis Black Authors of Children's Literature Initiative and our Reading 1000 campaign.
Our goal is to give away 1,000 book boxes
for 1,000 families
living in 1,000 St. Louis homes.
Our custom-designed book boxes include literature written by local authors that tell wonderful stories that celebrate the images and interests of Black children.
There are literacy puzzles with beautiful artwork and inspiring phrases that encourage children to believe the best that they can be.
We have t-shirts with our Reading 1000 logo and our top 10 fun and affordable activities that parents can do at home to help improve their children's reading skills.
We can inspire children together, be a financial supporter, and help us put books in the hands of children who are the most in need.
For more information, visit our website at stlblackauthors.com.
Together, we can make it happen.
1,000 book boxes
for 1,000 families
living in 1,000 St. Louis homes.
Okay, good morning again. So my name is Haley. I'm the Executive Director of ReVitalize, and I'm talking today with Julius from St. Louis Black Authors of Children's Literature.
Yep, good morning. Great to be with you.
I'm so excited to talk with you today. I was just going through your website today, looking through all the books that you're offering and the programs that you're doing. Can you tell me a little bit about your background and how you got started with this project?
Sure. So I'm a native St. Louisan. Grew up here. Grew up in the Jeff Vanderloo community. That's the 63106 zip code. Graduate of Dunbar Elementary School and Metro High School. That's a St. Louis thing to say what high school you went to. And went on to undergrad at Howard University and graduate school at Clark Atlanta University. But I've been an educator for a little over 20 years and have done practically everything in education, from teaching first grade, which was my favorite job in education, and also becoming a principal, starting a private school here, City Academy, inside of Mathews-Dickey with Don Danforth, and been an assistant to the superintendent, have taught courses at Forest Park. So I've done a lot in education. And I've primarily worked in communities that serve Black children, and Black children that are either living in abject poverty or growing up in what we would consider a working class or working poor household. But I've also had access to Black children who are growing up in middle income homes. And what I've discovered is that their situation in education is the same. They struggle. They struggle whether they are attending a school out in Clayton, and they struggle whether they are attending a school in St. Louis public school system. And they particularly struggle around reading and literacy skills. And as an educator, I always wonder, why is that the case? Why is that the case? I personally believe that, and through my experiences, that a lot of children just aren't connected to the text. And as an educator, when I would introduce Black children's literature to Black children, they became excited about reading and more willing to read. And I think it's because they saw a connectedness to the text. And so we know research is out there that suggests when any kid of color or any child, when they see themselves in the literature as it relates to images, if they're picture books, or can really see themselves in the story, then they have more of a willingness to read and they become more confident in themselves. We're still working on the research that suggests that confidence translates into competency, and that's what my work is all about, is trying to prove that and to also prove that Black children's literature is a definitive strategy for making sure that Black children become successful readers.
So how did you first find a collection of Black literature to introduce in grade 1? Where did you go to find that?
So in terms of our organization, I've always had an affinity to Black children's literature. As a teacher, as an administrator or principal, I would always start my days with the children reciting some piece of poem, some poetry, or reading an excerpt from an inspiring book. And a lot of times I would write the poetry or write the story myself. And so fast forward, there was a point in my career when I wasn't working in a public nor private school situation, and just trying to decide what was I going to do next. And I've always read children's books as a way to inspire me. And so I was home reading some children's books because I felt like I needed inspiration. And it was as simple as this. Something in my mind just said, well, why don't you put your stuff in a book? That was the only thing that came to my mind. And I had never published before, never published a book before, didn't know that process, but I did what most Gen X and millennials do. We go to YouTube school and we look up what we want to know or what we want to learn. And that's what I did. I learned how to publish by simply watching YouTube videos and reading some articles. So I published a collection of poems that I had written for my kids when I was a first grade teacher. Some of them I had written when I was the principal at City Academy. And then one of the core poems in the book I wrote just to put in the book, which is the poem Believe, which is where one of our core projects come from. So I did that, I published. I started meeting local authors who were having challenges getting their work into schools. Distribution is the key. And so I thought that I would bring these authors together and hold these for-profit events. But the educator in me wouldn't let it just be that. So I really want children to read. So I started doing these sort of learning or introduction activities for kids at Missouri History Museum. That got me into doing more work that looked like it was nonprofit. And then the museum had asked me to do this one special event during their winter getaway period where I featured The Snowy Day, which is considered the first piece of nationally recognized Black children's literature written by Ezra Jack Keats. And the US Postal Service had just happened to commemorate a stamp in honor of the protagonist in that book. His name is Peter, that year. And so we did this big event. I knew that typically a lot of times Black families don't go to the museum. And the museum had a solid group of white families that would typically come to all my stuff and participate in all of the activities there. So I really tried to push this event in the schools that primarily serve Black children regionally. But I still didn't think I would get a lot of families. So I had prepared for about 50 or 60 families, and we ended up getting 300 people, adults and children, to attend that event. So I was overwhelmed, the museum was overwhelmed, we were all happy. But what it said was that there is a need for this work. And there's a need for people to have connection to diverse literature. Posted all my stuff on social media, and someone from Scholastic was the first to reach out to me. And they reached out to me, we had a conversation about how they could help support our work. And eventually I created the Believe Project as a way for them to connect to what we're doing. And I continue to bring on authors to give them opportunities to be exposed. So that's how we started St. Louis Black Authors. It became a nonprofit in 2018. We haven't been around that long. And we started this project called the Believe Project, where we're building literacy libraries and labs inside of community centers and schools where books is the core of that space. We were fortunate to get Scholastic, IKEA, and PBS Kids through 9 Network as our first partners to do this work. And they did partner with me to open our first 4 sites. And we opened them in the fall of 2019, which was way beyond what I had dreamed. I only wanted to open 1, and we were able to open 4. And those 4 kind of cover the spectrum of educational spaces. So like, 1 is in a community center, 1 is in a traditional public school, 1 is in a charter school, and 1 is in a private school. So it just shows how the universe works, you know, when the time is right for something like this to happen. So we have those 4 sites open, and we provide kids just constant access. The space is designed specifically for children. It's designed to look like their homes so that they can make the psychological connection that what you do in this space, you can do at home. So you can build your own agency for literacy here and take that same agency and continue it while you're at home. And so we make sure that they have books. All of our authors that are in our consortium, they get copies, autographed copies of their books. Scholastic has been wonderful by helping us to get national authors to come. They get autographed copies through that process. 9 Network has a curriculum program called the Ready to Learn program, which is our anchor program in our spaces. It's a workshop style type program, and kids get free books through that. And so we're building libraries for them at home, as well as the library they'll have at school. When kids participate in 9 Networks program, they get a free PBS Kids PlayPad to take home with them. That's loaded with literacy games and ebooks, and they get a free PBS Kids Fire Stick so that they can download all the educational programming. So our goal is to just be a support to schools. Our goal is not to teach explicit reading instruction, it's to help kids believe more reading, to love books. Because if you can get a kid there, then as a teacher, you can move them down the explicit reading instruction pathway. But first you gotta get them to wanna read. And so that's what we're here to do.
With the families and the kids that you're finding are drawn to these spaces, is it normally the parents want their kids to have access, or the kids are trying to be into reading and are drawn to the space? How are people coming there?
Sure. So all of our spaces are inside of a school or a community center. Our first one is at Ferguson Florissant Ferguson Community and Empowerment Center, which is the building where Salvation Army and Urban League is on the grounds where the Quick Trip was burnt down during the Ferguson situation. Okay. So our first site is there. Our second site is at Sister Thea Bowman Catholic School in East St. Louis. The third site is Glasgow Elementary School in Riverview Gardens School District. And the fourth site is Old North Confluence Academy. And we will open a fifth site this year at Halls Ferry Intermediate School in Ferguson Florissant School District. We target kindergarten through third grade. So we work with all classrooms in that building that are K through 3. However, we encourage schools to allow their other children to have time in those spaces, because the books in those spaces range from pre-kindergarten picture books all the way up to through 8th grade, and that's intentional. It's intentional because we know some children read beyond 3rd grade and they're in first or second grade, and we want to make sure that they have access to literature that they feel like they can handle. There are some children under 3rd grade that can't read beyond it, but they believe if they hold one of the books that look like a chapter book, they're reading. And that's what it's really all about. It's about allowing kids to choose and pick and develop their own facilities for learning. And so that if they can just get the confidence, we think teachers can take that and roll with it. So any kid in the building can use the space, but we're only targeting K3. because our goal is to make sure that they're successful readers at the end of third grade, because all of the research suggests that when you are a competent reader at the end of third grade, you do better in school. For Black and brown children, you have a higher propensity of not dropping out by the end of ninth grade. And for all children, you have a higher propensity of going on to a college or university after 12th grade graduation. So this is not a parent program. This program is solely for children. The space is for children, and it is a yes space for children. This is not a space where teachers get to tell kids what to do. This is the space where kids get to do what they want to do. And so there are all kinds of other things in the space that they can do. There are easels where they can draw pictures, they can write words, there's magnetic letters in the space. There's all kinds of arts and crafts materials where they can do that, because literacy is more than reading. Literacy, we say there's 6 elements. I don't want to get too technical, but there's 6 elements around literacy that we get from the International Literacy Association. So kids should be able to do all of those things in that space, and they're surrounded in a space where they can see themselves in the stories and in the images in the space. So every space has a unique image, mural. That mural depicts the diversity among Black and brown children. That's intentional. Every mural has the word believe in it, as well as other inspirational words in it. So here's the transformational piece about this work. Based on national research, the Children's Cooperative Book Center, they suggest that less than 6% of all text introduced to any child in public or private school in America tells the story of a Black experience. Less than 6%. Yes. And in my professional experience is less than that. I would say it's no more than about 3%. And if you ever worked in a space that primarily served Black children, you know that. And so here we have created this space that has never existed before, where 80% of the books reflect their experiences through stories and images. Think about how transformational. No generation ever in this region of Black citizens have been in an educational situation where the majority of the books they've been exposed to tell stories about them, or where they can see images of themselves in those books. Think about how transformational that is. And we are in what year? 2021. So go ahead. I'm sorry, I don't want to take up all your time.
No, I love reading, and I'm passionate about everyone having access to stories that are relevant, you know, that they can relate to. Are you finding, so along with these spaces that you've cultivated, are you still doing any of the events kind of like at the History Museum readings and things like that?
We are. We're doing a ton of partnerships, which has just really, really been great. The great thing about the St. Louis literacy world is that everybody loves to play together. So there's lots of partnerships we have. We still do events at the Missouri History Museum. We haven't been able to do them because of COVID, of course, but in the past, every MLK Day, we would do 2 days of performances at the Missouri History Museum, where all of our authors will come together and we would present books in sort of like a reader's theater style. Or we would do some kind of dramatic presentation of Black children's literature. And we missed that this year. We didn't get to do that this year. So we still do a lot of work there. We have partnerships with the Little Bit Foundation. We have lots of partnerships with 9 Network and Turn the Page St. Louis, where we get to take books to schools. I do a lot of professional development training with teachers to introduce them to various titles that they might not be familiar with. So we still do a lot of work. A lot of our authors are doing story time. They've especially been doing it during this virtual sort of learning experience that we've been having.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of stuff outside of just the Believe Project. And we're glad about that. We're glad about that. And we're hoping that eventually we can scale up our work and not just allow it to be a St. Louis thing, but to be something that we move throughout the state and throughout this country.
Are you finding that some of the kids in this program who get to use the space are kind of coming up with their own stories that they want to turn into books?
We do. And a lot of them approach us about helping them to publish them as well. So to me, that has been, and I'm going to try not to get emotional, because when people ask me stuff about the kids, I will get emotional. I'm just going to tell you. Because it was just a dream for me, but your dream doesn't come real until it really impacts the people that you want it to. And we want this opportunity to impact children. So when I hear stories like when kids get into the Believe spaces, they believe it's their own space. They believe it's their home. And I remember one of the administrators at Ferguson said to me that when the kids first went into the space, they all decided to take off their shoes because they didn't want to mess up their space at home. That kind of stuff gets to me, because what that says to me is that we are making the impact that we're supposed to make. So yes, some of the children have approached us about writing books, but it's not just about that for me. It's about having the facility around literacy, because the reality is, if you're not literate, you can't have a thriving life, period. You can't grow into an adult that can successfully navigate life unless you're literate. You can't get the best house that you want for yourself. You can't get the best job you need for yourself. You can't even get the best health care because you can't read the insurance contracts for yourself when you're not literate. And so for me, that's really what it's all about. I love to help kids publish books, but what's most important to me is that they are fully literate.
So I know some of my like fondest memories are growing up. I also grew up in U City in St. Louis here, and I would go to the public library, and they have the bathtubs where you can crawl inside and read a book. And I think that having a variety of Black authors and stories about Black and Brown children is so important, not only for Black and Brown children, but for everybody. The more experience and ways of viewing the world that you can take in and understand and, make that your own creative world, I think is important for everybody. Is there a place where people can go to get your recommendations of children's books that they can share with their children or with their families?
The best place right now is through email. So our website has a listing of the authors that we work with, and it doesn't really list all of them. And quite honestly, I need to update our website, which we hope to do by the end of this first quarter. But the best way to do is to just contact me, St. Louis, STL Black Authors @gmail.com. I have lists. Another great resource is I See Me Bookstore in University City,
Okay.
Which is a bookstore that specializes in Black literature for children and adults. And you can get all kind of book lists from them. You can go on their website and see the latest literature as well. And I will say that a lot of the local bookstores and book distributors are doing a much, much better job at that. So Novel Neighbor is a great place to get a great list around Black children's literature. They have really worked hard to improve that. Book Source is a local distributor out of St. Louis. They have done a really good job to improve on their list or offerings of Black children's literature and young adult literature as well. And left banks have really, they've all worked hard to do better. And they can still do better. There's still a lot of growth to go. But your best in terms of brick and mortar will be I See Me bookstore.
Cool. And the spaces that you have around, I know some of them are inside schools and things. Can people in the public, can kids in the public who are not necessarily from that community, can they go into that space?
Only at the one in the Ferguson Community Empowerment Center, because it's a community center.
Okay.
The ones in the schools are specifically for the children that are attending that school. And that is intentional. Again, we have, with intention and systematically developed a space that we believe will support children learning how to read. The places where we exist, those schools and school districts struggle with getting kids to learn how to read. Mm-hmm. Regionally, 75% of Black children annually fail the 3rd grade reading exam. Think about that.
In the St. Louis region?
In the St. Louis region.
Yeah.
75% of all Black children annually, not 1 year, every year, fail the 3rd grade reading exam. And if the national research says that you have to be on grade level at the end of 3rd grade, what does that do to an entire community?
Yeah.
It disenfranchises them. The other thing is approximately 90% of all Black families in St. Louis attend a struggling or live in a community where there's a struggling public school system. 90%.
Yeah. You said one of your locations is Riverview Gardens area, right? They were unaccredited for how many years?
Yeah. So, and they're not the only one, you know, so the majority of the districts that struggle in this region serve Black children. And here's another interesting fact. Black children that are attending the school districts that are considered the best performing districts, like Clayton, Ladue, Rockwood, Black children are the lowest scoring in those districts in reading. Now, why is that? And I'm not asking you to answer that, I'm just rhetorical. You know, why is that?
Yeah.
And we certainly have the capacity to read.
Right.
What is it about the learning system or the science of reading system in our region? It's a national issue, actually, but I'm only going to talk about St. Louis. What is it about the way that we're teaching Black children that doesn't give them a solid pathway for becoming readers? That's what our work is all about.
Yeah. How can people who are interested in supporting this, how can they help you?
Several ways. We're always looking for donations because we're a nonprofit. So you can go to our website and donate. That's blackauthors.com. You can email me. And if you want to get our Square link to donate at stlblackauthors@gmail.com, or you can just contact me and I'll send you our address if you want to send us a check. So that's one way financially you can support. Other ways that you can support is donating books. And again, we look for Black children's literature as we define it. So we're not looking for every title. We're looking for books that tell a story about a Black family or a Black person. And we're particularly looking for what we call high interest books. We're not really looking for historical work. So we're not looking for books about Dr. King or Rosa Parks. We're looking for everyday stories about Black children.
The children interested.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're willing to do that, we have a book list on Amazon.
Okay.
So where you can go and buy books that are on our list on Amazon. You can do that. So those are all ways. We don't really have a lot of volunteer kind of opportunities other than when we're building a Believe space. Sometimes we need volunteers to come and help us to set up the space. But that's pretty much it. And
Awesome.
can you tell somebody about us?
Yeah, I will send the link to your Amazon list as well as the website and everything so people can find that easily. For the space that you're building this year, do you have an idea when it's going to be opening?
That's a very good question. Because we actually wanted to open it by September of this past year, but then COVID hit. And then we were thinking maybe we can do it this spring, like around April, but we don't really know yet.
Okay.
So I'm thinking that it probably won't happen until the fall.
Okay.
The space is pretty much set up. We just need the go ahead in terms of all of the restrictions around COVID.
Okay. Great. Well, thanks very much for talking today. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I know a couple book lists that I'll be getting, and I have some children around in my life, so I'm going to be spreading the love of reading around.
Awesome. And I'll definitely invite you to our opening in
Yes,
Ferguson.
I'll look forward to it. It's very exciting. Your 5th space, so that's incredible.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and yeah, talk again soon.